Good evening, and what we're going to talk about today are operating systems. Now, recently, when we were going through some of the exam papers, I noticed that many of you struggle to remember the different type of operating systems that exist. So this video is going to just kind of recap and give you some tips on how to deal with that. So an operating system is a piece of software that is basically intended to manage all the hardware and all the software inside your computer system. So when you've got to manage memory sticks, when you've got to manage your scanner, your printer, all of that, and any software and applications that you install, it basically controls all of the hardware and software, but it also gives you an interface so that you can actually interact and do stuff with your files. So when you can click and drag things around, that is the main thing. That is mainly what an operating system is used for. So in exam questions, you will need to know what the different functions of the operating system are, and the 7 that you need to remember are file management, device management, memory management, process management, network management, user management, and the user interface. So I'm going to break those down into some smaller steps just to give you some guidance based on the answers on a recent piece of work that you've done. So file management, it does exactly what it says on the tin basically. It manages all the files on your system. So any text files, any data files, any programs, anything that you've got installed, it sets permissions so that certain users can see the files and other users can't see the files. So it's in charge of organizing all your files and folders and making sure that permissions are set so that you can see them and other people can't have access to your files. Device management basically monitors all the devices, whether it's the keyboard, the mouse, the printer, the scanner, and the interactions with your computer system. And that's why we have a device manager. If you've looked in Windows, you may have seen a device manager and you can see all the hardware, and that's what the example of this picture is over here. And it manages all your external drivers, devices such as an external hard drive as well. Then we have our memory management, which looks at the main memory on the computer. So we've talked about segmentation, we've talked about disk defragging, we've talked about how all the memory needs to be allocated to do specific things. So you can allocate memory to work on a specific task, but also it can deallocate that and fill it up with other applications. So that is what happens with the memory management. Process management. So obviously we have a processor, we have our CPU on the computer, and in order to keep track of the status of a job, a process, it needs to actually look at the jobs as they come in the system, and it needs to manage each of these processes with the job. So it needs to look at the processes, it needs to look at the efficiency, the importance of jobs, and allocate and deallocate jobs. So that's process management. Then we have network management, which provides ways for basically, if I wanted to share a file with somebody, or I wanted to share a piece of software with somebody, or connect with somebody using a piece of hardware, that is what network management does. It also controls the access to this hardware and software. So I might allow, say, Jane access to the router, but I will say Bob can't access it, or I might allocate Ray access to the printer, and I might say to Dan, you can't access that printer. So that is what network management is all about. Then we have user management, where we look at the rights. So the operating system will decide whether somebody has a right or access to specific things, and the administrator can control the applications and the rights to these files. Then we have the user interface, which is how we interact. So on a Windows system, you may be used to the start bar in the bottom left corner, whereas on a Mac operating system, you're used to the dock at the bottom, and so on. So it's in charge of making basically something where you can click on a file, you can make those files work. It basically gives you a visual understanding of what you're doing. So if you click and drag that file into a folder, you can't see all the code that's going on behind it. You just see that that file has a visual representation of it. So Where most of you tend to drop down when it came to the exam questions is actually talking about some of the different types of operating systems that exist. So this is going to hopefully clear up some of those areas, so it's worth a watch. So we have our distributed operating system. So this is an operating system where you might have a large task split amongst a number of computers. So for example, where this has happened in the past is you might have somebody working on CGI movie, but they can't possibly do all of the editing on one computer, so the jobs split into smaller tasks and it comes back together. So a distributed operating system is where the large task is split into smaller tasks across a number of computers. So in an exam question, if you are asked or you're given a scenario where somebody is working on a job and they want to split that job over a number of different people, you would suggest a distributed operating system in this case. Then we have embedded operating systems, and these are small operating systems that are designed for one purpose usually, and they are small and sometimes they're designed to actually work with specific hardware. An example might be an MP3 player or a washing machine or an electronic toaster. These have specific purposes that they carry out. So if you have a scenario where someone has made an operating system for a specific piece of hardware, you may be looking at an embedded system in that occasion. Then we have a multitasking operating system, which is designed where lots of people, basically how you see Windows and how you see Mac operating systems, you can basically run multiple applications at once. So I can run Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Movie Maker, Internet Explorer. Basically, it allows me to work on more than one thing at once. And these applications can be handled, and because the operating systems are constantly evolving, we can run more and more applications at once. And this is designed to allow many people to run multiple programs. So if you have a scenario in an exam question where you have somebody that is telling you that they need to do a number of different jobs on their own, you might suggest a multitasking operating system. Then we have our multi-user operating system. Now, this one's a tricky one because what it basically means, I want you to think about logging in remotely. So you may have one main computer, such as a bank, but multiple users log into this computer system. So you can think of it similarly to a database in that you've got multiple users logging in through a shell. So I could type in and we all access the same operating system. Now, the thing about this operating system is that it needs to manage multiple users logged onto this machine, and it needs to monitor and allocate all the resources and also keep logs. Now, the one thing that's really important with this type of operating system is that you need to actually maintain the security, because if you've got multiple users, that's multiple access where people could be doing stuff to your operating system. So that's one drawback, one thing you will need to actually think about in approaching your exam questions. Then you have real-time operating systems. These systems are generally, if you were in a working in a factory and you had something that needed to react straight away to safety, you would use a real-time system. And this is mainly because this operating system must react in a given time frame. So my example here that you can see on the slide is if a nuclear plant suddenly starts having a meltdown, you need an operating system that can react quickly and actually react to the temperature change to cool it down so that nothing happens. Also in an airplane, we need something that can react quickly based on the turbulence so that it runs smoothly. Now, to finish this, I just want to give you some tips for essay style questions. If you are having to talk about operating systems in the exam, they never tell you to, but make sure you comment on the purpose of what an operating system is for. Now, we've talked about file management, device management, network management, process management. Now, in previous questions, a lot of you didn't actually comment on what the purpose of an operating system was. You just went straight into talking about which operating system you would use for the job. So make sure you talk about what the purpose is of an operating system, any operating system, then relate that to the suitability of the scenario. What does the one that you've chose do, and what is good about it? What alternatives might work? You've got to show that you've got an informed decision, that you've thought about both sides of the stories. And if you can think of any ethical issues, like whether people will get in and hack, or how you can link things to the Computer Misuse Act, or talk about security, make sure you comment on all of those in exam essay style questions. So just be aware of that and make sure that you acknowledge these bullet points whenever you talk about an operating system. I hope that's been useful. Thank you for watching. Please use this for revision. If you found this useful, please subscribe below. I upload more videos on computer science. Thanks for watching. Bye.